Hello to both of you and to everyone watching. I'm Scott, marketing guru here at Agency Zoom. I'm joined by Kat, our VP of Sales and Marketing,
Hello, hello.
and also Miles Merwin of Advisors Insurance Agency.
Hello, how are you?
Great. So today we're going to be breaking down an automation sequence based off of a specific lead source. So Miles, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your agency and what you're hoping to accomplish today?
Sure, I appreciate you asking, Scott, and thanks for having me on, Kat. I started the agency from scratch with 0 clients and 0 revenue, 0 income, 0 benefits. It'll be 9 years in March. And I had a couple years of experience prior to opening the agency in a captive insurance agency's office. And so back in March of 2012, I had a laptop, a cell phone, and a whole lot of hope. And I did not take one of my mentors' advice. And at that time, my cell phone, I did not have unlimited minutes. And he's like, you should get unlimited minutes. I was like, no, I can't afford that. Definitely not. And then I had 0 income coming in. So at the end of the first month when I opened, I was making, tons and tons of phone calls. My cell phone bill was enormous. And I was like,
Right.
oh, I should have gotten unlimited minutes.
That's the problems of a decade ago, right? Those are the problems that we're all grateful are now behind us.
No, I know. Just, as anybody grows, like a lady from Canada called to buy health insurance and I called her back and my commission from selling the health insurance policy was $40 and my cell phone bill for calling Canada was like $55. I was like, no, this is wrong. Something is wrong.
That's perfect.
So since then, I've really, really understood the meaning of building people and building processes, procedures, and systems. And with that, I've developed my team from a team of 0 to, we have over 20 people now and probably around 5,000 clients. And one of the next steps that I really needed to take in my business was automating a lot of our sales processes because we were just doing everything so manually. And I was trying to hold accountable my sales guys. And I go into their tasks list. I'm like, why do you have 260 follow-up tasks? Why do you have 32 phone calls due? And they're like, I just can't manually send out all this information all the time and also create results. But the activities weren't happening. So it was limiting our results. So I had to figure out, how do we find a tool, a resource to automate a lot of this communication to really help us do what we do best, which is create and maintain relationships. And so this is where you come in. I turned in our automation on, I like to say, I talked to Kat about this. Stage 1 was I took what you had that was already in the system and basically hit on and let it go. But then as I start reading it, I was like, that's not me. That's not us. That's not particular to our story. And so I reached out to Kat and Scott and said, hey, can you help me get this to stage 2, stage 3? And they're like, yes, that would be awesome. So I was very thankful. You guys are an awesome team.
Well, thank you very much. We love doing this. So this has been the point of Content Labs all along, is helping you guys go that last mile that either time or process or just even lack of knowledge sometimes keeps all of us from getting to. I know you guys have had that constant learning mentality just with how fast you've grown and how you interact with people. Miles, you're a very sincere person. You've mentioned to me in the past that you always have a business coach or a mentor, someone always pushing you. But still, even amongst all of those things, it's hard to sometimes get the little pieces put together. And that's why Scott and I came together quite a bit ago now to say, Content Labs could be really fun and help other agencies. So we're grateful to have you here today. Do you want to talk a little bit too, because it lines up with how you've looked at process growth alongside personal and people organized growth? Do you want to talk a little bit about how we honed in on like Dave Ramsey and ELP being something that other agencies would find value in, that would help you guys, but also is a really good partnership for you guys too?
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. The specific automation that Content Labs has helped me with is our endorsed local provider automation, which is for Dave Ramsey. So many people might not be familiar with him, but I live in South Carolina, which happens to be the Bible Belt of the United States. There's a church on all four corners of an intersection, not just one or two, but all four. And so Dave Ramsey is a huge advocate in the Christian circles to help provide education around really finances, financial advising, how to think through your money. He works with vendors like myself and many different criteria like realtors and financial advisors and insurance, to bring up a couple examples. So obviously we're the insurance piece. And with that, we align ourselves up with his ideas and principles around insurance and finances. And so we talk the talk of Dave Ramsey. We learn what his principles are about. We engage with our prospects in the same language, the same concepts, and we help move them through their financial journeys. So Dave Ramsey talks about the 7 baby steps. So we just talk the same language that he talks to help develop and nurture those relationships. It's been a great program. They really trust what Dave says. We line up with Dave's principles. So we're really just connecting with those customers who believe in that already. And so this program here is the automation that goes out specifically to that target type of prospect. And so we wanted to line up our communication with that specific target client. So it's not just random. It's got the logos. It has the language, the acronyms of Dave Ramsey. It has all the things of Dave Ramsey in the actual language to better create that connection.
That's awesome. And I think we should go ahead and dive right in then, now that we know what we're looking at and what we're working with, and see, what that looks like in terms of automation and content.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that, as Scott and I took a look at the automation that you had done almost in spite of yourself, because you do want to be involved and want to support your team, but at the same time, we're balancing this like support and being authentic and being very kind and available with scale, is you had put a text out there. And we're looking at this text right here, and I love that it goes out first saying right off the get-go, what we have found, as Scott and I have worked with agencies and even looked at response rates and stuff, you sometimes end up pigeonholed and really locked into that text communication with that particular person. And it's hard then to go from the agency owner, especially the nicer you are, which I'm sure you have that problem, and get them into a salesperson. So we've taken a lot of the messaging that you have in here around, I care about this, like you said, endorse local provider, providing value, and starting to nurture that person. And we moved it into an email for you. So I want to get to show you this email. We moved it into this email, and it's going to come from you still. It's going to have the "will be in touch soon." Again, very comforting, very personable. It's similar. And Scott, what is your rule on email subject line?
So it falls right in that perfect, that golden range of 3 to 5 words, where it's going to show up nice no matter what device they're holding it in, no matter what they open it in. And it's also has that sort of openness to it. Who will be in touch soon? What are they getting in touch about? So it prompts someone to open it to find out more information.
Yep. And then once we get it opened, one of the things on an earlier email that you had coming out from a producer that can sometimes be a little overwhelming for someone who hasn't met you yet is a big wall of text. We have a lot of information to share, and there's a lot of credibility to build when you're, matching up to what they know and expect from Dave Ramsey. So I wanted to try and take the value of you being involved, get it away from a text, pull you out of the fray a little bit. Don't want to put you in front of what I call is the lead bus. Yes. Didn't want to do that, but wanted you present. So this email felt like a good way. And then even just aesthetically chopping it up in a manner that has visualization to it, has your guys' goal and purpose. You guys are more than welcome, to use this other places as you see fit, but still gets that introduction in place, gives them the phone number, and gives them, begins to put a name to the overall organization, because you guys have, even in your branding, put forth a very professional foot. So I wanted to try to keep this personal centric, being that these are traditionally home and auto leads, correct? These are normally,
yes,
okay.
Right.
Yeah, so these are local people that they do want to know who you are. And we do still want to be professional because, obviously Dave has done that. But we do still want to make sure that you guys can scale and that we're never limited to well, Miles never texted me back. Yeah, Miles has a lot to do.
So there's two things on that note that I really like about this email. Number one's pretty simple. It's the visualization right there. Obviously, the imagery is always the first thing that's going to happen when you open this is you're going to see the text and then you're going to see the image and your eyes are going to go to the image. So what do you see? You see Dave Ramsey, the person that you trust, that you know. We know that that's who the lead source is coming through. And we see you, Miles, next to him, and then a quote that, really helps establish trust. And then the second thing that I really like about this email is it's all about saying, hey, I'm Miles. I'm the agency owner that's helping establish that trust, that you're reaching out first. But this email is all about handing off. You're saying, hey, you can trust me, and I want you to trust this friendly expert that I'm going to hand you off to. And so while it does get that initial, like, oh, the agency owner is emailing me, that excitement to it, it also helps you hand it off in a way that's meaningful and builds trust in that producer that just sending a first email from the producer might not necessarily get.
What are your initial thoughts on this one? Kind of fun, a good mix, definitely can do different branding and colors if that fits into what you guys are doing a little bit more.
One, I love the magic that happened to put me behind Dave Ramsey in the picture. I don't even know how that works. That's why you guys are awesome.
You got his back, right? Like metaphorically, you can always make corny jokes now how you got Dave Ramsey's back.
Yeah, I got his back. That's right. So yeah, if Agency Zoom doesn't work out, I got a spot for you on my team with magic pictures.
There you go. Kat, the magic picture maker. I could do that.
Picture.
I'm going to need a new job someday.
I don't know if Mo would like that. Yeah, I love this. I originally had it as a text, but you're right. They could reply back to that. I love the fact that it introduces with a photo, and I had I think a Loom video or something attached to the text, but it didn't create visualization. It was just another text with a link. And so I like the fact that it's an email and it draws your eye straight to that picture. It draws my eye straight to it. So and like you said, building trust is the number one thing that we're trying to do. Dave has earned their trust. Dave then extends that trust to me, and I'm extending that trust to my team. So the extension of trust, you don't lose, you might lose just a little bit in the gaps from each extension, but you're still holding on to that original trust versus having to establish it from the very beginning.
Yeah. And this really is that chain, like you said, that the chain that goes from Dave to your producer to help them be that trusted party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I built you guys something a little bit different than normally what I would do in Content Labs, and I want you to start using your Loom videos in there. So we'll get into that here in a little bit. But that was one of the first ones we did. The next thing we did was help update a bit of content here for your producer to send out. So same thing, just getting things tidied up. What we did here is we grabbed a quote from Dave Ramsey that if somebody hasn't answered by day 3 and it's coming from the selling producer, and maybe it's not quite resonating yet, if they're going to stick it out in new, we wanted to continue to remind them, what are we holding to? How did we get to know you? In a way that wasn't too pushy, because we certainly don't want to invalidate that trust with an overly aggressive sales pitch, but we still want to reaffirm hey, you're reaching out to us for a good reason here. So that's in there. Just put that in there, their signature. I think this is also somewhere that long term, if you wanted to have your Loom video, this would be a really nice place to have a GIF of your Loom video if you find that the quote gets you close, but maybe still not quite the response rate that you want.
And this is as well, if we look at the subject line, we had this first subject line that was very open and mysterious and draws people in. This is one where, all right, maybe that didn't work. Maybe someone didn't bite that hook. Now we're using Dave Ramsey's name within the subject line saying, hey, this is through that, we know you know that name. So if the first hook doesn't work, maybe this hook will.
Yeah, that's great. And that was what I was looking for, is adding in those, my stuff was very broad. And so adding in the actual language quotes from Dave Ramsey is what I was really looking for.
Awesome. Yep. Did some of that for you. We also then, one more thing here that when we got into day 4 that I thought was important, and we didn't really extend it past your 7 days. I liked this final email that you guys land on as your departure email, but I did want to build out this Content Labs text for you that your team would be able to have immediately go out once they got to that day 4 part. And it was just something that was nice and sweet, but then it has the nice part too at the very end here is it has a link in it again, that'll in a text actually technically send them two things. They'll see the text and then they'll have the preview of this, and it lines up like what you just said, Miles, with that Dave Ramsey content before we have that final day 7 sign off. We put that in there. This was just something more so than anything to leave it broad. We did focus on umbrella at this point because if somebody hasn't answered in that new stage, and you may not know if they need home and auto, I wanted to give you guys enough wiggle room to maneuver your conversation later.
I like that.
Yeah, and whenever we include these sort of instructional pieces, like when do I need an umbrella insurance, right? We like to point to a third party. In this case, you have the perfect third party because you already have someone they trust in Dave. So pointing specifically to Dave's site, to an article Dave wrote, helping establish a point, makes it so much more meaningful than if you were to send this huge block of text trying to explain it yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, love this. Now, the spot that I went, because you guys get a lot of leads from this, the spot that I saw that is our next gap is that somebody begins to talk to you, and this may or may not be exactly the right time for them. And how do we keep the leads that aren't great today in good shape? It's to nurture them. And what we use, at Agency Zoom, and what you've started to build out a decent amount into, is Smart Cycle. So I went into Smart Cycle to make sure that if today's not the day for someone, we're not letting down, the relationship that we have in Dave Ramsey, that we're still doing something that puts them in a good spot. So you have a nice email that says, we'll be in touch soon, that goes out to all your leads on day 1. Then I did something, and Scott can talk about this a little bit too, because I keep picking on him about it. I call it the Bob Ross method, happy accidents. The way to look human is to make mistakes. So I put this in here for you guys, that we can make a back-to-back mistake that is actually very intentional, that you never have to worry about. So on day 25, only your Dave Ramsey leads will get this text. And this is going to come from you at this point. So we're moving you out of the way of most lead buses. We're only going to worry about it if it makes it this far and needs a little extra nudge to get through. So this comes from agency owner, and then the team mentioned, the timing was a little bit off, just very comforting, like, hey, I'm here if you need me, warm, fuzzy stuff to keep things on good terms. Scott, anything that you want to talk about either around like the happy accidents or even staying in touch via text later on?
Yeah, so I guess there's two things I'd like to bring up. The first is that, we're sort of at that point now where this wasn't the right time maybe, or maybe they just weren't quite ready. And again, bringing back the agency owner is such a powerful tool. It's like that last Hail Mary, right? This person might not be ready, but what if they're not hearing it from that producer? What if they're hearing it from the person that's only one step removed from Dave? What if they're hearing it from the person who runs the whole agency, right? He knows what he's talking about. So again, that brings in...
Yeah, well, you're supposed to, right?
Supposed to.
Yeah, that brings in that amount of trust and that amount of credibility that it might just be enough to tip the scales. And then when we were talking about happy accidents, we're not saying go out and fill your text with typos. We're not saying go out and say something inappropriate, but leaving out just a little piece of information that you can follow up with the next day, that's still a complete text, that's still a complete message. But there was also this little additional bit, and actually this would have made that a little bit long for a text. So doing it the same day, being like, oh, I meant to send this to you yesterday, but there's also this link that we think you should check out, all of a sudden makes your automation look like it's an actual person texting them. And when that's coming from you, the agency owner, that just pushes that credibility scale even further and tries to get as much weight as we can to see if we can, switch things out.
I love it. That's fantastic. I would never have thought of that.
I saw it, I think 2 weeks ago, that I saw it, and I asked an agency, do you want to try this? And they're like, Kat, I'm down for anything, because they were buying leads. And talk about places that there aren't even happy accidents. There's just crazy accidents in buying leads. I saw an agency do this late in their process, and they did. They were bringing in like the all-stars at that point of, hey, I just wanted to check on you, followed up on those types of things. And it just feels really comfortable. Like the people that double text you normally in your life are your friends, your mom, your kids. Like that's the kind of relationship you normally have when somebody will text you twice. So yeah, loving the happy accidents here, and I'm glad you like it.
I do. And Kat, so if someone replies back to that and says thank you, does that take them automatically out of the Smart Cycle and then puts them back into contacted? Is that how that works if they reply to it?
It's totally up to each agency. So you guys can do that if someone responds to an email or a text. You can say put them back in new or put them back into contacted. Or some agencies say, if someone responds to a text, you can leave them in there. We know they're in there pretty well intendedly, that if they're moved to the back burner, that there is a time constraint. So that's based off of how you're coaching your team to use Smart Cycle.
And that way, oops doesn't send them back into, all right, let's get these guys.
Right. And we don't have to throw them back into the shark tank necessarily if they text you back.
Perfect.
So, and that's over, just for anybody that's watching this and wants to check on it, or Miles, we can even check as we wrap up today. That's in your guys' system settings. All your like big rules and long-term stuff lives here in your system settings.
Awesome.
All right, this is the icing on the cake. This is where I became a total nerd. Scott already made fun of me, so we don't need to do it much more publicly. My agent can't take it. We go to this. So 60 days out, coming from the agency owner. Obviously, you guys are more than welcome to put a marketing person into your account if you chose to. And everybody, has unlimited licenses. So if you want it to go out from marketing and then look like your agency owner, that's not a bad idea. But right now we wanted to do agency owner, Dave Ramsey's advice on insurance, and then talk about what the process is like for an agency to get to be an ELP, showcase you and the team. That way, if they're starting to talk to some amount of these people, it looks like a friendly face. Reading a little bit more from Dave, again, pushing them back to like, how do we know each other? Who's our mutual acquaintance? We're real people too. Don't be a snob. Time to answer. And staying in touch. And again, putting you, because you guys have a great brand, putting people still at the forefront and kind of at the heart of the brand in a way that doesn't make you guys look kitschy or anything, but more so like professional and still available and very kind-hearted.
And I think one thing that you talked about is sharing Dave's values and that sort of playing into the agency. Well, a lot of the times where you're using him in these emails, if you notice, come into the times when you're trying to provide value, not necessarily doing the hard sells, but, hey, did you read this article? Hey, did you know this piece of information? I call those value add pieces that aren't necessarily the big conversions that are going to get you the sale, but are just warming people up. And so using Dave in those moments when you're just doing things that provide value further aligns with that, sharing his values, sharing that sort of mentality.
No, I really appreciate you spending time on this. I know I messaged you at some point at one evening, maybe you sent me a message and I sent one back and you said you're about to pull your hair out or something trying to make this work. And you had just made a breakthrough or something. I know it was a lot of work. So I didn't expect this and I really appreciate it. It looks fantastic.
We love having it. The thing that's important for agencies as you guys start to put templates into your space is that if you really are going to build a heavily HTML template where you do have like left justify photo, you have a lot of links, you have your right justify picture, and then you have your social and stuff in here for your stay in touch things. The important part when building this is that you build it and then you just select it here. So I'm going to show you guys real quick just where you guys can go build it. In case anybody wants to be a complete nerd like me. So it lives over here in your templates.
Okay.
And then you can name it. And I always try and name it something that's reasonable to find so that when I am selecting it out of the list. And then it's going to preview here for you. So you can see it with a lot of the formatting and such. The whole preview. You guys are still able to use personalization in this space. So if you wanted to say, hi, Kat, you certainly could. Today, the customer referral link, signature line, a lot of different stuff that you guys can still put in here. Honestly, the templates have some of the most freedom and flexibility over what fields you guys can access.
Okay.
So you can put the agency city in there. You could put the prospect city to say, we do a lot in this particular little town. There's so much you guys can do in this space. You do have to build it like this. You do have to go full nerd. Guys, I tease Scott constantly about being a nerd. And then, right about after finishing up texting you, Miles, and being like, I'm about ready to pull my hair out. I'm so confused. I sent Scott aren't you proud of me? Look how pretty this is. He's like, sure, nerd kid. So
Pure pride. Nothing but pride.
I'm like a little kid that brings like artwork home from class. I'm like, aren't you
Good job,
proud?
Kat.
So, I'm really glad you like it. You are able to, once you guys build a template too, you don't have to edit it in the source code. So once you get one built, if you want to work on it in here, you are able to edit and work on it in here. So keep your parameters, have somebody maybe build you a template, get in touch with Scott and I for content labs, you name it, and we can always get some amount of this kind of stuff put together.
Kat, is it possible to copy this and then just change like languages? I've used the same format that you had. Can I just hit like copy this template and then adjust the language to use it in other places in my business and adjust like links and things?
Absolutely. So best idea there is select all of this. So you're going to do your select all, copy it, and then make a new template.
Okay.
And then in your normal version of it, then make your adjustments.
Okay.
So,
Awesome.
you betcha. So yeah, guys, anytime you want to like take what you get as an initial template and make a whole new one, get your source code, the actual not fun, nerdy stuff, copy that over, and then edit in here where you can, like you said, Miles, like visually just make little adjustments here and there to what you want to write. But I thought this gave you a lot of formatting space. So
yeah, we could apply it to different types of referral sources.
Absolutely.
You betcha. Yep. And you guys, I tried to leave this even open-ended, that all you have to do is change this button's destination and a little bit of lingo here, but you still had your home and stuff, and more than happy to get you an icon too if you want one for commercial or anything like that.
That's awesome. Thank you. I don't even know what all that code means that you just showed me. It looks completely like geek out. So I don't know.
With all my spare time, that's what I do. I go down the nerd rabbit hole. So.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much.
The majority, of course, you're so welcome. I think that's a majority of what we wanted to go through, Scott. Is there anything else that you think is like, if this is phase 2, like any phase 3 that should be on the horizon?
I mean, obviously, working into other lead sources, trying to do the same level of attention throughout your process, and just going through adding personalization wherever you can is always amazing. Adding imagery wherever imagery isn't is always amazing. But you guys have a really strong start here into that sort of phase 2, as you call it. And I think that you guys have a really clear path forward at this point. I hope you feel the same way.
I do. And how do you, while I have you, we don't have to take a lot of time on this. How do you feel like there's the lead section of automation, there's the new, then there's quoted, and then there's smart cycle, and there's not much in contacted. That really, in my mind, doesn't need much, but the quoted part needs a lot of work, and you guys had a lot of things already built into there. How confident do you guys feel? We've just kind of turned that on and tweaked it slightly, but it's certainly not like dedicated to Dave Ramsey type information once the quote is going out. How confident, have you gotten feedback on the stuff that you guys already had in there?
We've gotten positive feedback so far on the quoted. And if anything, what we've received is that some agencies don't feel like it's aggressive. And I say aggressive in like tone, but also in speed enough. So we've tried to build it for the median group, which we have our Bible Belt agencies. I have my New Jersey guys that are, grabbing bagels on the way to a big commercial meeting. So we've tried to meet in the middle. I will say that one of the things that's probably really important in automation that does get underutilized, especially on the quoted stage, are your shot clocks, which you guys have one here that's 45 days out. It's always nice to reassign, potentially, depending again on which lead sources you would want them focused on, to your agency owner. So you guys have a neglected and an age shot clock. So to take your most valuable leads and toss them either to somebody that can really close and use your reporting to see on who's most successful at that, as, hey, I need some help. Or same thing on some of the like high value ones where you say, we're going to have to start nurturing this person. We kind of know at this point it might not work out, to get it over to the agency owner, the brand builder, the person that's out shaking hands and visiting. I guess not shaking hands right now. We'll get out of COVID someday and we can all shake hands again.
Bump elbows. That's it.
Bumping elbows with people. For sure. I think that's the thing that probably goes the most underutilized once an agency makes those first adjustments to what happens in their market.
I will say you always have that room. You always have that room to go in and say, let's make this a little more personal for my agency, for my speed, for this specific, lead source, and say, I want to incorporate more of those Dave Ramsey quotes in there. I want to take that little bit, easy steps that you can do to say, you've seen how we incorporated the language in earlier steps. Let's incorporate a bit of that language now. Just steps like that.
And so I noticed that a lot of the quoted ones, the lead source, when we just turned them all on, they say for lead source, all lead sources, lead type, I've adjusted some of these to just personal, but in order to to make this specific to certain types of lead sources, you'd have to go in there and then unselect all and then select each type of lead source that you want for each one. Is that right?
Currently you would, or you would go in by even like category to unselect and such.
Okay,
So
perfect. Well, this was fantastic. I am so thankful for your work, and I think I can take the stuff that you guys have done and kind of copy it and adjust it now that I have a visual and move it into, like you said, the other lead sources that we have, and put it in different areas.
Awesome. And just to wrap up our time today, then, thank you again so much for coming in, Miles. You've provided us a great opportunity, and we're really thankful for all the time that you've given us. For anyone watching, thank you guys for spending this time with us as well. If you want to learn more about how we helped Miles and download some templates for yourself, check out down below. Also, there's a sign-up link down below to get involved in your own content labs, and we hope to see you here.
thank you guys. Thank you, Miles.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.